Welcome back, everyone. Check it out. This little guy followed me home from VCF East 2023. What can I say? I'm a sucker for strays. Anyway, so I went to VCF East, and if you haven't seen my video, it's about an hour and a half, I think, long, a little over an hour long. Actually, I think it's almost 2 hours long, where I basically walk through the entire thing, show all the exhibits. And I don't know if I got any footage from in the consignment area, but I want to talk a little bit about that. So let's get into it. So we have our audience here. So VCF 2023 was held in Wall, New Jersey, at the Evans area. That's Camp Evans, which was a former, wow, there's a lot of history on this place. You really should read the Wikipedia article on it. It's a very technologically historical landmark. And it is now basically just a giant technology museum. And I think it's worth the visit if you're in the area. The normal day-to-day operations are more of a museum featuring exhibits, kind of chronicling the history of electronic communications from the Marconi wireless telegraph all the way to the modern era. It's located on Marconi Road, after Mr. Marconi himself. I cannot pronounce his first name. It's Italian. But enough about that. So I went to the event to meet other computer hobbyists and collectors. And if I met you there, how you doing? A lot of folks actually did recognize me from the channel. I was surprised to see that. A couple of folks had mentioned that they had been watching me since they were very young, and they're adults now, and that makes me feel old. I've been on YouTube for 14 years. So in that 14 years, time passes. Sure does. People get older. What was considered obsolete, or what was not considered collectible back then, is collectible now. The definition of vintage computing is an ever-evolving subject. Of note, I met a couple of YouTubers. Actually, one particular YouTuber, I met him for the second time, because I actually saw him back in 2013 at the Hamvention in Dayton, back when it was held at the Hara Arena. And I have a cat that's meowing at me. Hold on, let me go deal with him. But I can continue talking. The Tech Knight, who's famous for his Weather Channel exhibit. He's all mad at me now. So he's very famous worldwide for being one of the folks who has restored and brought to operation an original Weather Channel head-end system. So shout out to the Tech Knight. Love your stuff. Good seeing you again. Another one is Retro Tech Chris, who I have had a lot of interactions with online over the past couple of years, mostly related to the Tandy 1000 and the Compaq LTE series of laptops. Retro Tech Chris was very helpful in guiding me around the place, kind of showing me around, because he already knows the complex like the back of his hand. And so him and I spent some time with a few other folks. One of them is Justin D. Morgan. I think that's his YouTube name. I'm not sure. But he was a pretty cool guy. We had a few meals together, shared a few laughs. Anyway, one of my other goals in going down there was to unload a few things. So I sold a couple of machines. I'll tell you what they are. One of them, let's see, we had the Motion Computing M1400 Windows XP tablet. That's a mouthful. That sold for $80. I sold my Toshiba Satellite 110 CT. I think I got about $50 or $75 for that one. I'm not sure which. I have to look at my price list. We sold the IBM ThinkPad 355C. I believe I priced that one at about $75 because it was in such good condition. We've got the Sony Vaio PCG something or other, the one with the detachable docking station, or more of a port replicator, which turns it into a full-featured laptop. It was a neat machine, but it was kind of a cast-off in my collection. It doesn't really have a place. It doesn't fit anywhere. And that's what a lot of folks did. They sold off or brought, with anticipation of selling, all of their oddballs. The machines that just either redundant or they just don't fit the theme anymore. What is my theme? What is the theme of my collection? Two things. Machines that have had an impact on my life. The machines that I have owned when I was younger and just kind of learning things. I mean, we're all just kind of learning things, but the machines that I owned when I was a high schooler or a middle schooler. So the iconic machines from my past. For example, the Toshiba T3200SX. It was that very machine that got me into really diving into DOS and troubleshooting my own mistakes. The Compaq Contora 425. That is a machine that I carried with me throughout most of 10th grade. It was one of my favorite laptops. I owned one back then. I have one now. The Compaq LTE 5000 series. Another one of my favorite laptops. For mainly because of its high feature and it's just a very cool machine. It's got a lot of nice features for a machine from that time period, 1997 or so. As far as desktops, I've got a few Apples, a few Macs. I've got an LC3, of course. Got to have an LC3. That was my favorite desktop Mac, period. Hands down. I've got an iMac, a 1998 iMac, right over there. I got the 98 iMac because it is an iconic machine that was actually released right around the time that Apple started turning things around. Steve Jobs had taken back the company. Apple was starting to turn a new leaf. They were going full bore into new industrial design at the helm of Jony Ive. And the iMac Revision B or even Revision A, those are iconic for their time. So I had to have one. And I've also got the Blueberry iBook G3. But in keeping with the theme of iconic machines from the early days of personal computing, I've also got a Compaq Portable. That machine also happens to be one that belonged to one of my friends in high school. And long after he went off and started a career designing satellites, him and I used to mess with that Compaq back when we were just kids. And I ended up with it. It's in my basement. Actually, no, it's in my office at work. But keeping with the theme again, I told myself I will either come home empty-handed, ideally, and I did. Everything I brought sold within the first 2 hours of the swap shed being open. Everything sold, including my Kodak camera. I had a Kodak DC-40, I think it was. That sold. 40. I think I sold it for $50. I priced my stuff to sell. I didn't want to take it home with me. But I told myself, I'll either come home empty-handed or I'm going to come home with an IBM XT. Obviously, you see where that went. Let's talk about this XT. And kind of explore it a little bit. So as we all know, the IBM PC was the first MS-DOS compatible machine. It was the machine that sparked a revolution. And they are iconic. You'll see these in the background shots of TV shows, movies, news clips throughout the 1980s. They probably sold more of these than Volkswagen made cars. Not just Beetles, but cars. I mean, they sold bazillions of these machines. They're not rare, but in good condition, they're kind of on the rare side. And complete, no less. I decided that if I was going to buy an XT, it had to be complete. At least it had to have a functioning monitor, the original monochrome monitor. I would accept nothing else. There were actually a couple of these for sale. One of them was paired with the original color display, and it had the CGA adapter. And I believe it even had the original 10 megabyte full height hard drive. There was another one for sale. It was actually a PC with that weird expansion device that hung off the back. And I've seen a couple of them for sale on Facebook and eBay, but it had this giant device attached to the back. Obviously, the PC and the XT are very similar, but the XT has 8 slots. The PC only had about 5 or 6. The PC also had a cassette port, where the XT does not. Little fun fact. You could buy, in 1980, you could buy a stripper model PC with no drives and just the cassette adapter. It was a very, very rare option, but they did exist. Now, the great thing about the PC is that it was designed to grow. It was designed to evolve with the owner's changing needs and with the emergence of new technologies and adapters. That being said, pretty much no two XTs are exactly the same. No two PCs are exactly the same. They were all spec'd out differently. They were later customized, modified, bastardized, whatever. This particular one still has what I believe to be all of its original cards with a few additions. And we're going to go ahead and take the cover off and see what those are. The very first thing I noticed about this machine was that it was missing the original hard drive. I will be sourcing a 10 megabyte hard drive for it. Maybe. I'm not really sure yet. I haven't decided for sure, but I'm kind of leaning towards that as an eventuality. And there's a few ways I can go with this. The 30 megabyte drive does an initial seek test, looks promising. The one that's in here is a half-height Seagate RLL drive, about 30 megabytes in size. It's paired with an Adaptec RLL interface. The RLL drives are slightly different from the MFM drives, which is what would have originally come with this machine. Once again, if you've got a working 10 meg drive that's in good running condition with a controller, I think it's the ST506 that those used, please let me know. I might be interested in acquiring it from you. I found them on eBay, but they want dumb, stupid money for them. But they're out there. They are out there. Being paired with the original monochrome monitor was kind of a harbinger of things to come. One thing I do know is that these could have been spec'd with a couple of different graphics options. The base model machines got the IBM black and white graphics adapter, or the MGA adapter. The MGA adapter works only with the IBM 5151 display. And the IBM 5151 display, you got it, only works with that interface card. So, what's wrong with the MGA graphics card? A lot, quite a bit actually. The MGA graphics card is a text-only card. Let that sink in for a second. Text only, no graphics at all. So I have, now obviously we're missing a keyboard. I do not have an XT compatible keyboard. I paid for one from an eBay seller. I paid way too much for it. I paid more for the keyboard than I did for the entire PC, or actually the exact same amount. So we can't fully test this machine yet, and I haven't found a way to quickly modify one of my existing AT keyboards to work with this machine. There are adapters, but being the kind of guy who likes to keep things as original and period correct as possible, I am putting my efforts towards acquiring and doing whatever I need to do to get that keyboard working, the one that I paid for. So when it arrives, we'll do another video on that. So far, the only thing wrong with that keyboard is the space bar doesn't work. It's a buckle spring keyboard. They're very easy to work on. I've had them apart before. I'm not really worried about it. So we talked about the graphics cards available. So there was the MGA card, and then there was the CGA card. The CGA card is kind of the golden ticket here. The CGA card will work with a color display. It'll work with pretty much any CGA display. Now, I've owned a couple of these machines in the past, and both of them had the CGA card in them. The one that I had more recently, back in 2009 or so, I had it mated with a Magnavox. It was a Magnavox Amber display, and it was a great combination. Unfortunately, I sold it. I was running out of room. I sold it back maybe about a year or so after I acquired the machine. The third option was a more often than not user upgradable option. Or you can, bring your IBM to a repair shop and have them do it. But it was the Hercules adapter. The Hercules adapter is actually called out by name on most of the leading software boxes as a possible requirement. And here's a copy of ALF, IBM Apple Commodore. So this looks like a multi-platform box. Here we go. IBM PC XT-AT 256K, 2.0 DOS, color graphics. But let's look at some other boxes. Most of the leading software producers of that time supported the Hercules specifically. Here's one example. Attack of the PC Robots by the 8-Bit guy. He specifically calls out the Hercules adapter as being a compatible display option. And we all appreciate that from him. So as I was saying, the Hercules adapter was a very popular upgrade for these machines. The Hercules adapter could support pretty much any monitor, but it was designed specifically to support the 5151, of which a lot of them existed. And it was a quick and easy upgrade. It expanded the capability of the machine, and pretty much every leading software manufacturer called for the Hercules by name when they were listing their system requirements. Let's take, for example, this random game that I pulled out of my pile, Attack of the PC Robots. Now, this particular game specifically calls out both Tandy and Hercules, which is pretty cool. Without getting into the specifics of the Hercules and what it gave you as for video modes, it pretty much is the best option for this machine. Not every game and piece of software will work with a Hercules adapter. We're going to kind of find out which ones do and which ones don't work once we start diving in. I have ordered a Hercules adapter from a local seller, which will be shipped to my house momentarily. It's actually within walking distance, but the guy selling it it's not really walking distance, but I could easily pick it up on my lunch break, but he did not list local pickup as a shipping option, and I didn't want to lose out on it. The card was actually reasonably priced, and Hercules cards are getting hard to find. But this is an original Hercules card, not an aftermarket or copy, and it's the Hercules Plus card that I bought, so I'm hoping that was a good choice. I'm sure someone will recommend otherwise. But I want to use the original monitor. Now, As far as functionality, and we'll get into the insides in a minute, but as far as functionality, without a keyboard, I can't fully test the machine. So we're just going to power it up and see what it does. The monitor, the original 5151, is powered by powered by a female Molex connector. That you might have noticed this plug on a lot of later ATs, and it was really just for the external monitor. The monitor, by the way, does not have a power switch. It's powered straight off the system unit. So this monitor would have had very little use unless you had an IBM PC with this particular display card. It's a very inexpensively built monitor. I believe it is built by Samsung. It is made in Korea, so that's kind of an indicator of that. What really surprises me, though, is the overall condition that everything came in. I have, in all disclosure, I have cleaned this machine thoroughly. It was very clean, but it just had a little bit of, 40, I think it's 40 years old. It'll be 40 years old next year. It was actually built in November of 84, according to some of the dates that I found on it. And so, yeah, it's practically 40 years old now. But it had just a little bit of grime, not much. This is pretty much as it came. No cracks, no scuffs, nothing really to speak of in terms of blemishes, except for that missing Model F. That set me back $200. Thank you, keyboard scalpers, by the way, for that. I appreciate everything you guys do for the vintage computer community. Thank you for scalping our vintage keyboards and turning them into necklaces or whatever the hell you do with them. Like Flava Flav with a clock around his neck. There's a bunch of hipsters walking around with Model Fs and Model Ms hanging from their necks. I digress. The visual that comes to mind is Harold from the new Red Green show. Anyway, if you don't get the reference, you're too young. Okay, so we pretty much covered the condition. What did I pay for all this technology? Well, as you see it, 200 simoleons, $200 for all this. And they regularly sell for a lot more than that. I think whoever had it at the show, they really didn't want to take it home with them, and I don't blame them. It was heavy. Getting it out of... Now, let me talk about that for a sec. We'll turn it on, I promise. When I initially did my sweep of the consignment room, so the show officially opens in full force on Saturday morning. I went there Friday to kind of check in, drop my stuff off, get it priced, take a look at what was there, and decide if I was going to buy anything or not. And this machine kind of showed up later on Friday. It appeared on the racks, complete monitor system unit together. And I looked at the other 5100 series. It was a 5150 and a 5160. This is a 5160. And they were a little like there was a 5160 with the Model F keyboard, but no display. And I didn't know what it had for a graphics card, and I didn't want to tear it apart to see. That machine was selling for $350. The one with the color display in the Model F keyboard, that one was selling for $700. Yikes. There was another one, and it had that expansion adapter thing on the back. That one was going for, I want to say, and it was by itself. I don't remember what it sold. I don't remember what they priced it at, but it was more than this one. This one, so each device was $100. I could have bought them separately if I really wanted to, but I decided let's just keep them together as bonded siblings, like Oreo and Butterscotch. My bad, Oreo and Tommy. That's Butterscotch. He's kind of an outlier. Okay, so I decided not to buy anything on Friday. The next day, Saturday morning, I went to go check out consignment again before I did all the exhibits. And it was a madhouse. The line was out the freaking door. I saw a guy carry out an Amiga 4000 on his shoulder that he paid $3,000 for. If $3,000 for an Amiga 4000. I guess I didn't realize what Amigas were selling for, because that just seemed a little bit outlandish to me, but love is love. When you find what you want, you take it and you take it home. I hadn't really decided on buying anything on Friday, but Saturday I'm like, I'm never going to get in there. And by the time I do, there won't be anything left. So I'm standing in line. People are coming out saying the place is decimated. There's nothing left. Don't even bother. Turn around and go home. I'm like, whatever. I'm not going to wait an hour and a half additional before I find out that there's nothing left that I want. So I did the exhibits, had lunch, came back, and the line started to die down, and I decided, you know what? I'll give it another shot. I stood in line for maybe half an hour and finally got in, and there she was on the racks, still for sale. There was another guy looking at it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take it now. So I grabbed the system unit. I couldn't carry them both. The line to get to the registers was about an hour long or so. No joke. It was, I'm telling you, this place was mobbed. So I grabbed the system unit, and I couldn't take the monitor, so I grabbed the tag off the monitor and attached it to the PC. I paid for both. Got back into the main hallway. I asked one of the attendants if they could just keep an eye on the monitor for me, and he agreed to do that. And so there we go. I got everything to my car. And that, by the way, that scene is actually in my other video. You can see me kind of popping the top off. Give it a quick glance to make sure I didn't buy a box of bricks, because that can happen. You can buy something like this, you open it up, it's full of blocks. Stranger things have happened. But anyway, let's turn it on. So, in full disclosure, I have already powered this up. And, well, let's just see what we got. Okay. I think I got the display bright. Here we go. So right off the bat, we get an error 301, and look at this. It does have some raster when you turn the brightness up too much. That's all fixable stuff. It's a monochrome monitor. This is all fixable. Okay? Not a worry. The geometry is a little off, but it's doing its initial memory count. Error 301. Missing keyboard. Whatever. Not worried about it. I have a keyboard coming, and we'll test it out further when that does arrive. So the original IBM PCs and the XTs did take forever to do a memory count, and there was no way to bypass it. So we do a floppy seek, and we get an error. Resume F1 key. Once we get past this point, we'll know if the hard drive is good or bad. At this point, it sounds healthy. The rumbling you hear is a power supply fan. Pretty common stuff. It's a 120 volt Etri fan. Pretty hard to find, but we'll fix it. I'll either put new bearings in it, or I'll get it going. I'm not too worried about it. See, the nice thing about these 40-year-old IBMs is there's nothing we can't fix. I love that. Hard drive sounds great. It's a stepper motor drive, so you get that me sound out of it, which is just that in itself is worth it, right? So this machine, it looks like it looks promising to me, and I'm very glad I found it. But once you get past the cosmetics, the plastics, the stuff that breaks and gets ruined over time. I had one of these a few years ago. It's on my channel back in 08, 09 or so. And it actually had, I believe it was the Harvard University stamped. They used to hot stamp. Colleges and medical institutions, they would hot stamp their IDs into them. And that's permanent. You can't undo that. So it had, I think it was Harvard, burned into the shell of the machine. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. But once you find one in good cosmetic condition, you know, getting these things back to life is nothing. It's really nothing. It's a cakewalk because everything is through-hole soldered. There are schematics out there for this stuff. As a matter of fact, the monitor, there is a cap kit for this for like $30. It's a good price. And I don't have to go researching and going through Mauser catalogs and all that. I can just order the cap kit for the monitor, and that's going to take care of all of the more commonly failed caps. And then we could probably go a little further. If there are any more, we'll do those. That's the beauty of these old machines, is they're simple. Very simple and very well documented. No mysteries. And the great thing is, IBM used mostly off-the-shelf parts on these to save money. That was also to their peril. So, again, parts, not a problem. And there are so many of these early hard drives out there. If you needed to buy an original drive, you can. But just to be on the safe side, while I was there, I went and bought an X-Tide adapter kit, which allows me to fit an IDE drive to this XT machine. And there's other kits you can buy that actually allow you to put a CF card in there too. See, I love stuff like this because it's a pleasure to work on. So let's look inside for a moment here. So there's our power supply. This is original. It has a date code of November of 1984. And if you look over here, this is the system. This is, I believe, the system identification tag while it's on the assembly line. And the last one I had, I believe this was missing. It's made out of gauze. There's a lot of materials in this machine that are almost exotic now because computer manufacturers don't use these materials. You got a thick steel chassis. Well, thick enough. You've got the system ID tag is printed on gauze. And November 1984, Florida is where it was made. Part number 636101. Oh, actually, this may be the tag for just the speaker or the speaker bracket. I'm not really sure about that. Because otherwise it would probably have a serial number on it for the system unit. But that's still intact. I mean, this thing's complete. The hard drive is a 1987 edition. I know that because the Adaptec interface has a date code of 1987 on the firmware chip, or on the EEPROM chip. So the hard drive is not original, clearly. I will probably try to find an original 10 meg just to have it. And there's a gentleman that I've sold drives to in the past I'm going to reach out to and see if he's got one kicking around that he'd be willing to sell or maybe trade for something. Because they're not rare. They're not rare. This is a 360K floppy drive. And you've got your, this is a connector for an external drive. So there was an external drive bay that you could buy for these. And you could put, I believe, 2 additional 5 1/4 inch floppy drives. So you could have a total of 4 floppy drives on this machine if you really wanted to. A, B, C, D. That was definitely a thing you could do in your IBM PC XT. The original IBM cards do not say IBM on them anywhere. There's no part numbers. It just exists. This is our MDA graphics card, and this one is the one we're replacing. We're gonna take this out and we're gonna put a like I said, a Hercules in its place. This is our RAM and actually, wait, which one is this? This is the AST 6-pack Plus. So this is expansion RAM, a real-time clock with battery backup, a parallel interface. No, a serial interface, sorry. It's a serial, 25-pin serial interface. And I think it has some other features too. I'll have to look at that. But this is the 6-pack Plus. These are, this is a quality card. This is not some cheap Taiwanese expansion card. These are the real deal. We've got right here, this is the factory async card, or the DB25 serial port. And then we're back to our floppy port, our floppy interface. The logic board is the 64 to 256K board. It is fully populated, which means that there's 256K on the board and 256K on the graphics board, and that gives us, I'm sorry, on the AST board. See, back then we didn't have memory slots. We had chip sockets, and when you ran out of chip sockets, you added a memory board. And there were so many memory expansion boards available for these machines. They're not rare at all. There are so many of them out there. I've already gone ahead and ripped out the battery from the 6-pack Plus. I think they sell that exact battery at Batteries Plus. It's coin cell, thank God. Some of them had the Varda batteries, which were known for blowing up, and they're actually kind of a meme in the vintage computer collecting hobby. Varda batteries would just leak out. They were stacked coin, I believe they were coin cell stacked batteries or something like that, and I believe they were alkaline, and they always leaked, destroying so many motherboards. If I am correct on this, I believe there is you can buy a brand new motherboard for this machine, for this case. And they are available, unpopulated. You have to populate it yourself. But again, nothing here can't be fixed. Everything is through hole, with the exception of our weird, out-of-place Adaptec RLL interface, which has surface mount resistors. Everything here is through hole. Those are the days. As far as capacitors go, the monitor, I'm going to get the monitor kit for it. We'll go through the monitor. We'll try to get it going. That's what I like about monochrome monitors, because they're easier to fix. You don't have to align 3 guns. It's just, and yeah, there's no bullshit. It's just, it's easy stuff. Easy stuff. I've worked on a few already. Let's see. Power supply caps probably should be done, although it does seem to run okay. I'm not going to run out and do it right now, but I'll probably end up doing it in the end. All the capacitors on the motherboard are ceramic or tantalums, and they seem to be just fine. Tantalums can blow up at any time and violently, but I'm not going to rush out and replace all of them. I don't think it's necessary. There's a few electrolytics on these cards. We'll do those too. Yeah, those are easy enough. The thing is, capacitors in 1984 were not the same quality that they were in 1994 and later. I just picked 94 as an arbitrary year. But back then, capacitors, when they went from wax capacitors to electrolytics and sealed canisters, they figured it out pretty well. And these caps really do have a good long life. I mean, this thing is, again, it's 39 years old, and it still runs. So far. So far. Other maintenance items could include the floppy drive belt. I don't think those have much of a failure rate. This is a belt-driven floppy drive, just like the Apple IIs. And interestingly enough, just like the compact LTE Elite laptops, they also, and this was in the mid-90s, they had belt-driven floppy drives. That just it's mind-boggling to me, actually. But yeah, belt-driven drive. Now these, you had to adjust the speed with a strobe light. If you take this drive out and look underneath, there's strobe marks on the motor. I'm sorry, on the flywheel, which is just crazy. And I believe those are adjusted. There's some potentiometers. It's a 2-speed drive, I believe. So you have to adjust it for both speeds. Just crazy. So yeah, you need a fan. Probably not. I don't know what I'm going to do with the hard drive, if I'm going to downgrade it back to its original or if I'm going to just leave it alone. I'd like to find an original one just because. Just because. Oh, dishes are done. But yeah, Pretty nice machine. Good condition. And that's what I was really going for. Because I don't want to spend, if I'm going to buy something like this, I don't want to spend all of my time fixing cosmetic issues and dealing with bullshit that I just don't want to deal with. You know, it distracts me from the problem at hand. We want to preserve and restore this machine. And then do what with it, I don't know, but we'll figure that out when we get there. And then there's another option we have. I could actually get one of the CF card adapters and add a second floppy drive, because these are easy to get. Add a second floppy drive, so it's like my compact, which has a hard card in it, a hard card 20. And, you know, we could have the hard drive inside the machine integrated with the interface. That's an option we have too. And I believe that was a very popular option, by the way, for the original PCs. You know, you could just put a hard card in there and leave both A and B floppies in place and just run it that way. But the reason there's so many of these still around in working condition is because they were built very well. You know, IBM took quality very seriously. You know, they didn't cut corners on these. I mean, if they did, well, the corners that they did cut were using exterior, outside vendors to supply their interface cards. But for the most part, and these are made in the USA, back at a time when we actually made stuff in the USA. How about that? Can we add a second hard drive without adding a second controller? No, we can't. We need a second controller. I was going to look at that, maybe adding another one. I actually think I have another one of these. It got me thinking. I actually had a half height with a controller. I wonder if I still have it. I think I do. I know I sold a couple of drives to a guy in, it was not too far from here, as a matter of fact. And it would have been in one of these containers. Is that it right there? No. I thought I had another one. No, I don't. Wishful thinking. But the one I did have when I had a spare drive, a spare stepper motor drive, half height, it was, I believe it would have been an an MFM drive. So, yeah, I guess that is no longer here. But I definitely had one. Oh, for sure. And it is no longer in my office at all. So, too bad, so sad. I'm going to take some gum. So what's the benefit in having a full height drive in this machine? Let me tell you. None. Excuse me, I'm chewing gum. I told you I was going to have gum. The benefit is in the experience. The full height drives were louder and they would shake the table. That's it. You could actually feel the vibrations in the table. Those early 10 meg and 20 meg drives, they were something to experience. I don't know. Originality, I guess. So let me reach out to some folks, see what I can come up with. Because, you know, I'm trying to think. I'm going to have to look at a PC closely because we crammed 8 slots into the same case that only had 5 previously. So, yeah, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess if they stopped it here, yeah, that might be it. The slots are only up to here, and then they had that second DIN port right about there. Oh, that makes sense. Missing one of the original screws. Missing a couple of the back screws as well. I got to find some of these. So the PC and the XT used these when they were new. Shouldn't be that hard to find. But I want to keep it original as much as I can. So when we pick this up next, we're going to talk a little bit about... No, we're going to test it more. We're going to have a keyboard. We're going to have a Hercules card. I'm going to test it before and after the Hercules card. And we're going to just have a little bit of fun with it. What do you think? All right. Until then.